الحمد لله رب العالمين واشهد ان لا اله الا الله ولي الصالحين واشهد ان محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى اله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا الى يوم الدين اما بعد. Today inshallah ta'ala the 10th of December, the 9th of Jumad al-Akhirah 1446. We continue with the 11th lesson on the Exquisite Pearl, explanation of Abdul-Rahman bin Nasir al-Sa'di's poem السير إلى الله منظومة في السير إلى الله والدار الآخرة, journey to Allah and the home of the hereafter. So we have this is the next to the last class. Next week inshallah ta'ala will be the last class. We have made it today to the station of Ihsan, which is the 12th station. However, it was something last week. We finished up the conceptualization of tawakkul, and we mentioned that Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah ta'ala said that it is impossible to conceive of tawakkul without these three. So he mentioned the tafweed, wal-isti'ana, and rida. All right. What we did not mention last week was this hadith of the Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam, which inshallah is a reminder of tawakkul on a daily basis. This dua that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam encouraged us to make every single time we leave our homes. Bismillah, tawakkaltu, from tawakkul, tawakkaltu ala Allah, wala hawla wala quwwata illa billah. So Bismillah, anytime we say Bismillah, there is a verb that is connected to the Basmalah. So here, a person is leaving his home, so it's Bismillah, yani in the name of Allah, I am leaving, yani I am exiting my home, I'm leaving my home. Tawakkaltu ala Allah, I place my trust in Allah, I am relying upon Allah. طيب. What do you think is at least part of the hikmah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam saying this upon leaving the home? Tawakkaltu ala Allah. Anybody? Yeah.
That you're putting your total trust in Allah for the outcome of the day.
Okay, so I'm putting my total trust in Allah Azza wa Jal for the outcome of that day. طيب. Yeah.
Part of tawakkul is to actually take the practical means, so perhaps it's like a reminder that I'm going to go out and do what I can to.
So part of tawakkul is actually taking the means to achieve what it is that you desire, that you're trying to get. So like the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam was describing the birds, he said that they do what? They go out in the morning, they come back on full stomach. So as you're going out, right? You're leaving the home. Another meaning, wallahu ta'ala a'lam, is the home is a place of familiarity and routine, and it's easy to get comfortable in your home, right? It is your home at the end of the day. There's not too much in general that happens that's unexpected. It's the home. Going out, however, is a lot different. There's the possibility for anything to happen. Of course, that also applies to the home. You don't, you can't for sure say that everything in your home is going to be as you expect. That's for sure. However, the possibility and the probability of something happening when you go out is very different than being in the home, right? So that requires actually an increase in a person's reliance upon Allah Azza wa Jal to help them navigate those changes and those unfamiliar circumstances. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. طيب. What does la hawla wa la quwwata illa billahi actually mean? Yeah.
There's no power, no ability except my power.
طيب. Behind the translation. Yeah.
I heard that hawl comes from hal, which means the state of something.
Okay.
So hawl, la hawla la quwwata illa billah means nothing can change except with Allah's permission.
Nothing can change except with Allah's permission. طيب. Okay, anybody else? Yeah.
But it's a negation of the how and the quwwah. Like there's no how and no quwwah because it's nafi al-jins.
طيب. Perfect. So, hawala means what? You said state, but hawala actually is movement, right? طيب. So a transition from one place to another, from one condition to another condition, that does not happen. You don't have the strength to do that except with Allah Azza wa Jal giving you that strength. So you have no strength, yeah? Huh? It's you recognizing, it's not necessarily tafweed in this sense. It's you recognizing that you don't have the ability. So because you don't have the ability, yes, you will put that in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, yes.
Basically saying that you're showing humbleness to Allah and submitting to the fact that you're totally helpless.
Yes.
According to anything that takes place, and nothing is going to take place except that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows it to happen, and you have no say-so in that.
So it's I'll restrict it down the way that many of the scholars restrict it, and you can write this down. There's no strength to repel evil or resist sin. There's no strength to repel evil or resist sin, and no power, okay, to acquire good or do acts of obedience except with Allah's aid. So you're looking at both, right? You're looking at the ability to repel sin and to acquire that which is good and do acts of obedience. None of that can happen except with Allah Azza wa Jal's aid. Right? لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله. بسم الله توكلت على الله. لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله. So this is something that we should say every single time we leave the home as a reminder to ourselves of our dependence upon Allah Azza wa Jal. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu. Wallahu al-ghani wa antum al-fuqara. Right? Wallahu al-ghani wa antum al-fuqara. Allah is the one that is ghani, He is rich, self-sufficient, and you all are in need. You all are dependent. You are frail beings. And wallahi, we have to remind ourselves of that, especially in a society that wants to pump the ego all the time. So reminding yourself of that frailty, not to the point that you don't believe that you can do anything, but that you believe that you can only do it with the help of Allah Azza wa Jal. طيب. The hadith, just so that we also benefit from the actual wording of the hadith. Anas ibn Malik radiyallahu ta'ala anhu said that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, if a man leaves his home and says, Bismillah tawakkaltu ala Allah, la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah, it will be said, you have been guided, defended, and protected. Yani the angels will say, you have been guided, defended, and protected. And then the shayateen will flee from that person. They will saying to each other, how can you reach a man, right? What power do you have over a person who has been guided, defended, and protected? So it is a protection from the shayateen. طيب. ماشي. Now we'll move on to the station of ihsan. Fadal.
Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Allahumma ighfir li shaykhina wa lil hadirin wa lis sami'in wa muslimin. يقول المؤلف, the station of excellence. عبد الإله على اعتقاد حضوره فتبوأوا في منزل الإحسان. Worshipping the divine, believing in his presence, thus taking their place at the station of excellence. This is the station known as the station of excellence, ihsan, which the Prophet ﷺ explained as being that you worship Allah as if you see him For if you do not see him, he sees you.
Right. So this is the prophetic definition of ihsan. To worship Allah as if you see him, for if you do not see him, but if you do not see him, he sees you. So there are actually two levels to ihsan, and I'll wait till we get to the next slide to talk about those levels. However, I do think it's important at this point to talk about the definition, linguistic definition of ihsan, and then we'll go into a little bit more about the levels of ihsan and what it means. So, linguistically, ihsan is the verbal noun derived from the verb ahsana. Ahsana, which means to do good or to do something in the best possible way. All right? So, essentially, when we talk about ihsan, that translates to doing good or to excellence in the act of or performing a deed. The opposite of ihsan is isa'a, right? To do something badly, okay? Just like the opposite of a hasana, right, is a what? A sayyi'ah. So ihsan and isa'a. طيب. Also, so there are a few things here, and I'll go through each of them just so you can get a broad idea. The word hasan means something that is good, but it also means something that is beautiful, right? So we say hasan al-wajh, beautiful face or handsome, okay? Ahsana may also refer to and be synonymous with atqana, which means to do something well or to do something with perfection. All right, that also is supported by the statement of Allah Azza wa Jal. La ilaha illallah. طيب, we'll come back to that. But الذي أحسن كل شيء خلقه ثم هدى. صح? What is it? الذي أحسن كل شيء خلقه. لا, I'm thinking something else. طيب, we'll get back to it, inshallah. We'll come back. المهم, إحسان, إتقان. Those are also synonymous. طيب. So when we look at the total meaning, all right, then you see the idea of something being beautiful and good, something being perfected and excellent, all right? And it carries all of that meaning, which is important for us to understand here, because the word ihsan differs according to the context. If I'm talking about ihsan to Allah Azza wa Jal and doing an act of ibadah, then what am I talking about? What do you think that means? Huh? طيب, this is referring to what we just what talks about here, excellence. But if I talk about ihsan to walidain, وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا, then it's a little bit different because now I'm talking about being good to them, being dutiful to them. There is a common denominator, which is beautifying something, right? So I'm behaving beautifully towards them. I'm doing this act of worship for Allah Azza wa Jal beautifully. So that is performing it with excellence. All right? طيب. الراغب الأصفهاني رحمه الله, he says الإحسان فعل ما ينبغي فعله من المعروف. Okay? It is to do a good act that is appropriate for that particular time. That is ihsan. Because sometimes you might do something, but it's not the appropriate time, place, or so on, so forth to do that thing. So that's not ihsan. All right? And he says there are two types of ihsan. One is al-in'am al-ghayr. And I'm mentioning this here because it's going to come in the next line of poetry as well. So one is bestowing kindness upon others. Okay? So for example, you say, أحسن إلى فلان. يعني فلان أحسن إلى جاره. So and so, he did something good for his neighbor. All right? الإنعام على الغير. To do something good or bestowing kindness upon them. The second type, or if you will, of ihsan is al-ihsanu fi fi'lihi. Okay? And that is to do something, achieving excellence in a particular action, or striving for perfection in a particular action, or knowledge. So it can attain or pertain to both knowledge and actions. So Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he said, and we'll get back to the statement of Prophet in a minute. Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu said, الناس أبناء ما يحسنون. He said, people, okay, are the children of what they yuhsinun. Here, what they do very well, what they master. Like, what's that mean? They're the children of what they master. Yeah. Like, it means that they are defined by what they do well. Like, when you're a child of somebody, you are called by that person's name. You are Ibn Fulan, Ibn Abbas, Ibn Umar. You're defined by that person because you are their child. Al-nasu abna'u ma yuhsinun. People are the children of what they master. They're defined by what they do well. That's okay. They're defined by what they do well. And even throughout the history of Islam, people have taken on the name of their profession. Right? Many of the scholars of hadith, al-hadza, for example, they take on the name of what they do. Like, a lot more can be said about ihsan, but we'll get to bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. We'll get to that when we get to the next slide, inshallah ta'ala. Fadda, keep reading on here. Yeah.
When a person envisages the station in all his states, in particular the state of worship, his heart is prevented from turning to other than his Lord. Instead, he is fully content with Allah, focuses his heart upon him, and has spiritual decorum whilst worshiping him, doing whatever perfects it and refraining from whatever mars it.
Type, stop there. So, what happens when a person is able to reach this level of ihsan? His heart does not turn to other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why? Because he is worshiping Allah Azza wa Jal as if he is standing in front of Allah. Mind you here, when the Prophet ﷺ says, as if you see him, as if you see him. See him with what? With the heart. Tayyib, what's the dalil from the Quran that is not just your eyes that see? فإنها لا تعمى الأبصار ولكن تعمى القلوب التي في الصدور. It is not the eyes that are blind, but it is the what? It's the heart that rests in the chest that is unable to see certain things, right? And so Allah Azza wa Jal is affirming here that the heart sees. This is what we might even call insight. Still a form of what? Sight, right? Insight. So here, the heart, once it sees Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in that worship, it's not turning away. SubhanAllah. I want you to really wrap your minds around this because it's going to get deeper. The idea though is that once a person is preoccupied with striving for the sake of Allah Azza wa Jalla, seeing Allah, there's nothing else to look at. And you can think about something that really is beautiful to you, something that would capture your attention from the things of the dunya, right? Like, for example, like let's just say you like looking at the ocean and the sun setting at the ocean and all of that, right? And then somebody says, "Oh, look at this ant over here." What are you talking about? Like, why am I going to look over here at it? I'm looking at this beautiful sunset on the ocean. I have no reason to look at anything else. It just, there's nothing else. Tell you, that compared to that, there's nothing compared to when the heart sees Allah. There's nothing else to look at. And so here, this is what the author is saying, that once the person gets to this level of ihsan, his heart is prevented from turning to other than his Lord. It doesn't want to look at anything else. It's totally preoccupied. Instead, he is fully content with Allah, focuses his heart upon him, and with that focus, there's no distractions. All right? And he has that decorum whilst worshiping Allah Azza wa Jal, doing whatever perfects it, yani the worship, and refraining from whatever would stain it, mar it, so forth. Make it imperfect. Yeah. Further.
This station is one of the greatest and sublimest of all spiritual stations. However, it requires gradually training the souls step by step.
Why do you think that is? Why does ihsan require gradual training? Yeah.
There's iman that has to come before it.
Tayyib. There's iman that comes before it, and then there's what that comes before iman? Islam. Right. So when the Prophet ﷺ talked about ihsan in the hadith of Jibril, which is mentioned, part of it here, obviously, that is mentioned above, there are levels. That first level is just submission. And you won't reach the rank of iman until you've submitted in Islam. Right? And that does require a person to really get over themselves. Otherwise, submission is difficult. Right? And then a person reaches that rank of iman. And by the way, don't look at these as like totally separate ranks with no overlap, right? Islam can only be valid with some degree of iman. Otherwise, it's nifaq. It just looks like submission, but it's not really submission. There has to be some degree of iman. And then a person goes up higher and higher in iman, so they are considered to be a mu'min. And then that person graduates to a level of ihsan. But what do we say ihsan is? It is excellence in worship. And to be excellent in anything, you have to spend time doing it. And this is what he's talking about, gradual. You're not going to get there on day one. A person, when they first start praying, it is submission. It's submission. The levels of iman take time even to bake into the salat itself, right? At first, it's just submission. I know I have to do this. So you submit. And then a person works on it, shay'an for shay'an, gradually, right? Until they start to enjoy that salat. And it's not just a matter of submission. And then they grow in that, in their salat, right? Until they reach the level of ihsan. And we'll talk about different things that can be done to bring a person to that level of ihsan, inshallah ta'ala. But the point here is that the author says it's a gradual thing. If we recognize that ihsan is a higher rank, then it's obvious that to perfect something, that to excel in something is going to take time and practice and effort. And ultimately, it's a gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now,
the servant will not cease habituating the soul to it until he is drawn to it and accustoms himself with it. Then the servant will live in delight of his Lord, experiencing joy and bliss in his closeness.
Then ultimately, what does a person get in this life from ihsan? they will find joy in the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Shaykh Abdul-Muhsin al-Abbad, hafidhahullah ta'ala, the father of Shaykh Abdul-Razak, he wrote an article in 1389, which is almost 50 years ago. No, more than 50 years. Yeah, 57 years ago. He had an article published on ihsan. And he highlighted something that most people don't highlight when they talk about ihsan. So I wanted to read what he said. Hafidhahullah ta'ala. I'll go through some of what he said, and then to get us to the point that I found that I don't find most people talking about. He says the meaning of ihsan, yani from the prophetic meaning that was given, is to worship Allah as though one sees him, which necessitates profound reverence and constant turning to him. Constant turning to Allah. Note that, because this is one of the ways that a person reaches the level of ihsan. It is through inaba. Through inaba. We've talked about tawbah. We did not talk much about inaba. Tawbah is to return, right? It means to return. So almost like you're going down a path and then you make that U-turn and you come back. That path is displeasing to Allah Azza wa Jal. You make a U-turn and you go back to Allah Azza wa Jal. That's tawbah. Usually when we talk about tawbah, not all the time, we're talking about returning from either having done something that is haram or leaving off something that is an obligation for us to do. However, as we mentioned before, there is a tawbah that is mustahab, that is beloved by Allah Azza wa Jal, even though it is not an obligation. And that is to make tawbah from leaving off something that is mustahab, that is beloved to Allah, even if it's not an obligation. Or to make tawbah for having done something that is makruh, even though it has not reached the level of haram. Inaba, however, is constantly returning to Allah Azza wa Jal, even if a person hasn't even done something makruh or left off something that is mustahab. It's simply that they've spent a portion of time just doing something that's permissible. It's like a person is engaged in work. That work that they're engaged in may have preoccupied them. Maybe they forgot the niyyah of doing that work for the sake of Allah Azza wa Jal, so that they could provide for the creatures of Allah Azza wa Jal. That is the ones that they are married to, their children, so on and so forth. Allah Azza wa Jal's creation. And so that 3 hours of being out of the dhikr of Allah Azza wa Jal, they return back to him. Inaba. Constant turning to Allah Azza wa Jal. Until the point, yani, that inaba leads to a person being in constant muraqabah of Allah Azza wa Jal. It leads to ihsan. Right? It leads to ihsan. Meaning that a person is constantly aware of Allah Azza wa Jal watching them. طيب. So, Shaykh Abdul-Muhsin rahimahullah ta'ala, hafidhahullah ta'ala, he goes on to say, it also entails performing acts of worship according to the methodology outlined by his messenger, sallallahu alayhi wasallam. As the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam highlighted in his explanation of ihsan, the motivating factor, right, for those who have reached its highest level, and that is the awareness that Allah observes their actions. Right? This awareness ensures sincerity and prompts them to perform good deeds, knowing that Allah Azza wa Jal sees everything and will reward or punish accordingly. Right? Now we get to the part. What is the reward for ihsan? Right. Allah Azza wa Jal says in the Quran, وَهَلْ جَزَاءُ الْإِحْسَانِ إِلَّا الْإِحْسَانِ. Right? And is the reward for ihsan other than ihsan? Is the reward for doing good other than that good will be done to you? Allah Azza wa Jal says, وَأَحْسِن كَمَا أَحْسَنَ اللَّهُ إِلَيْكَ. So he tells you to do ihsan. Wa ahsan means what? And do ihsan. Kama ahsan Allahu ilayk. Just as Allah did ihsan to you. Like, we following? All right. There's another broad rule in Islam. It says what? Al-jaza'u min jins al-amal. That the reward is of the same type of the action. What's that mean? Give us an example of that. Yeah.
Refraining from wine and intoxicants gets you the wine's agenda.
Okay. So refraining from intoxicants in this life. Well, you won't be intoxicated in the next life. Allah bless you. Huh? So the Prophet ﷺ said that's for them in this dunya, gold and silk, and it's for us in the hereafter. So refraining from it in this life allows you to get it in the next life. طيب. Okay. ماشي. والله في عون العبد ما كان العبد في عون أخيه. Allah will continue to aid his servant as long as his servant is doing what? Aiding his brother. Al-jaza'u min jinsil amal. The reward is in accordance to the action that is done. طيب. I'm going to summarize what Shaykh Abdul-Rahman is saying here. He says, it is evident how the reward corresponds to the deed. Those who worship Allah as though they see him in this life, will be granted the ability to see Allah in the next life. لِلَّذِينَ أَحْسَنُوا those who do ihsan, لِلَّذِينَ أَحْسَنُوا الْحُسْنَى وَزِيَادَةً. They will have al-husna, which is Jannah, and even more, which the Prophet ﷺ said the ziyada here is what? Looking at the face of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So those who do ihsan, worship Allah as though they see him in this life, they will be given al-husna and even more in the next life. They will be given Jannah and the seeing Allah Azza wa Jalla in the next life. And the Prophet ﷺ used to say in his dua, وَسَأَلُكَ بَعْضَ الْعَيْشِ بَعْدَ الْمَوْتِ وَلَذَّةَ النَّظَرِ إِلَى وَجْهِكَ. Oh Allah, I ask you for the joy of seeing your face. SubhanAllah. And so, the reward corresponds to the deed. Those who worshiped Allah in this life, as though they saw him, will see him in the next life. لِلَّذِينَ أَحْسَنُوا الْحُسْنَى وَزِيَادَةً. May Allah Azza wa Jalla make us from amongst the muhsineen. May he grant us the ability to see him, see his face in the next life. Allahumma ameen. طيب. Further.
The station of ihsan, conceptualizing. To worship Allah as if you see him, and if you do not see him, then he surely sees you.
طيب. Have we conceptualized ihsan? Therefore, ihsan is of two levels, okay? And that's what we cover in the next segment, if you will. The first level is mushahada, and the second level is muraqabah. The Prophet ﷺ said to worship Allah as if you see him. That is mushahada, okay? Shaykh Tahir rahimahullah ta'ala, he says that this type of worship is the worship of love and longing. Yani, al-mahabba wa shawq. Whereas the second type is al-muraqaba, vigilance, right? That is covered in the statement of the Prophet ﷺ saying, if you don't see him, right? Because you're not going to see him in this dunya with your eyes. But even if you can't, and we'll talk about what this means, by the way. Even if you don't see him, then getting to the level where you know that he is watching you, that he sees you, that is ibadat al-khawf wal-rahb, right? Of fear and awe. Okay? And both of them are great. And both of them are we should be striving to worship Allah Azza wa Jalla between hope and fear. But when the drive as Ibn al-Qayyim described, as we talked about earlier, right? We talked about the bird. What's the driving factor? The head. And that is al-mahabba. So if a person gets to the point that they worship Allah Azza wa Jalla at that level of mushahada, طيب, what does it mean to worship Allah Azza wa Jalla as if you are witnessing Him, standing in front of Him Azza wa Jalla? What does that actually mean? As the ulama describe, it's that you get to the point where you see the manifestation of Allah Azza wa Jalla's attributes in everything. Like what? So when you see the khalq of Allah, you think about al-Khaliq. طيب, ماشي. Yes. So when you see the mercy of a mother to her child, even animals, right? Then you remember Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim. When you see the love that is displayed, like the Prophet ﷺ, when talking about one of the companions, right? He says, are you all amazed at his love for her and how much she hates him? But you see Al-Wadud, subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? You start to see the man in everything that exists. It reminds you of Allah Azza wa Jalla, right? And that drives you to worship Allah Azza wa Jalla as if you see Him, because you're constantly reminded of Allah Azza wa Jalla in everything. That's even outside of worship, okay? And that leads to ihsan, even to the creation of Allah Azza wa Jalla, which, like I said, is going to come in the next line. طيب. The second level is muraqabah. And that is to worship Allah Azza wa Jalla with the awareness that Allah Azza wa Jalla is watching over you. So even though you're not fully cognizant, right, of that worship in the sense that you see Allah Azza wa Jalla, obviously with your heart, but at least that you get to the point where you know that Allah Azza wa Jalla is observing you closely. That is why the first level of ihsan is greater than the second level of ihsan. It's more virtuous than the second level of ihsan. طيب. Keep going.
Desired outcome. Singularity of focus. Elevate the quality of one's devotion. Deepen their relationship with Allah and find joy in worship.
طيب. So here, if we, the first part, the desired outcome is singularity of focus. And that's what we talked about from the very beginning. And that is that Allah Azza wa Jal, once your heart sees Him, that becomes the focus of the heart, and nothing else matters in that sense. What happens as a result of that singularity of focus and a person not being distracted, then what happens? The quality of one's worship is increased. There's an elevation in the quality of worship. All right. What does that look like? When a person gives sadaqah now, okay, they're not giving from their crumbs. They're not giving from the leftovers. They recognize, لَن تَنَالُوا الْبِرَّ حَتَّى تُنْفِقُوا مِمَّا تُحِبُّونَ. You will not acquire bitter, that level of righteousness and ihsan, until you give from that which you love, not from the leftovers. And so that's another level of sadaqah. Where, by the way, giving away your crumbs, I don't mean to put it like that, but that's still sadaqah. You don't have to give it away. It's not an obligation for you to give it away, right? It's still sadaqah. It's still a good thing. But as they say, don't give Allah your leftovers, right? Not if you want to reach the level of ihsan, right? Your fasting is not just you refraining from food and drink and sexual intercourse, whatever is going to actually invalidate the fast. But not. Your fasting now is a different level. It's your speech, it's what you listen to, it's your consumption as a whole, right? It's not just what you allow to enter your stomach, but it's what you allow to enter your body, period, including your mind. So it's what you consume as a whole. Your fasting is on another level. Your salat is on a different level, right? It elevates the quality of that worship. Right? Eventually, what happens with this, and this is what you see, yani, when you read through the biographies of the Salaf, and of course before them, the Prophet ﷺ, yani, how does a person stand until their feet are swollen? How does that actually happen? Except that they have a singularity of focus, right? The feet are swollen and they don't even realize it. And that does happen, by the way. That happens to people whenever they enjoy whatever it is that they're doing. And then they realize after the fact, right? Which is interesting. Yani a person pushes themselves to certain levels of physical exertion, or a person is so engrossed in whatever it is that they're doing. Like some people, that's how they like to read books like that. He's there 10 hours. He doesn't even realize that much time went by. He didn't eat anything. He's dehydrated, everything else. Why? Just so immersed. I'll tell you, I'll give you an example that I think all of you can relate to. You ever see a kid play a video game 7 hours straight? Can they do anything else for 7 hours? Seriously, nothing. But they're so engrossed. They love it so much. It's attracted so much of their attention that they don't even realize that the time went by. Anything else that's going on. Right? All right. That's just a modern day thing that a person can kind of relate to. But subhanAllah, we would see that from when you look at those biographies of the Salaf, and you look at the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ, you see that with the worship of Allah Azza wa Jal, because they found so much joy in their worship of Allah Azza wa Jal. That's that level of ihsan. طيب. How do we get to ihsan? How do we get to ihsan? The first way is to ask Allah Azza wa Jal. This is part of tawakkul, right? Don't think that you're just going to, because you want to get there, that you're going to get there, right? And so this, which we've gone over both for dhikr and for shukr, it comes back for ihsan. Allahumma a'inni ala dhikrika wa shukrika wa husn ibadatik. Husn ibadatik yani ihsan. Okay? Mu'adh ibn Jabal, right? Radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, was one of the scholars amongst the companions. And one of the younger companions, by the way. The Prophet ﷺ took him by the shoulder and he said, Wallahi, I love you, Mu'adh. Wallahi, I love you. He says, so I advise you to never leave off saying this dua at the end of every salat. At the end of every salat. Which some of the ulama says, this is not just referring to the 5 daily prayers, but it's every single salat that you pray. Allahumma a'inni ala dhikrika wa shukrika wa husni ibadatik. Oh Allah, aid me in remembering you, thanking you, and worshiping you with husn, with ihsan. Right? Mashi. Oh, some other ways that you can get to ihsan. I mentioned al-inaba. As the author mentioned, rahimahullah ta'ala. The other thing that we'll mention here is to focus on perfecting your intentions and doing the obligatory acts and following them with beloved acts, so that you become a wali of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because if you become from the awliya of Allah Azza wa Jal, then bi'idhnillahi ta'ala you will reach that level of ihsan. As the Prophet ﷺ says, that Allah Azza wa Jalla says, وَمَا تَقَرَّبَ إِلَيَّ عَبْدِي بِشَيْءٍ أَحَبَّ إِلَيَّ مِمَّا افْتَرَضْتُ عَلَيْهِ, that there's nothing that my servant can draw near to me more than that, or better than that which I have made what? An obligation upon him. And he continues to draw closer to me with the nawafil, or the mustahabbat, those voluntary acts of worship, until I love him. طيب. Another way that some of the ulama have talked about, contemporary scholars, is, and this will get you to a level of muraqabah, is to move in your day as if there is a camera upon you, like a 24-hour, like there's 24-hour surveillance. And make sure that that camera, okay, is being watched by those who you love so much that you don't want to disappoint them. Alhamdulillah. And it is also being watched by people who you know do not like you and will use it against you. All right? So, if you begin to, your actions begin to reflect the fact that I don't want to disappoint this group, and I know that if I do anything wrong, this other group is going to punish me somehow, okay? Then you will realize that Allah Azza wa Jalla is greater than all of that. Because He doesn't just know what you're doing, He knows why you're doing it. And they don't. They don't know why you're refraining from whatever it is that you're refraining from, or why it is that you're doing what it is that you're doing. But Allah does. And He knows beyond that what you didn't do, okay? What you planned on doing and did not do, and all of that. And so Allah Azza wa Jalla is greater than all of that. And this is why the last thing that we'll mention for this is that one of the greatest ways to grow, or to get to that level of ihsan, or one of the ways that will cultivate ihsan, is to grow in your knowledge of Allah Azza wa Jalla, His names and His attributes. طيب. ماشي. والله المستعان. خلق.
The station of good character. نصح الخليقة في رضا محبوبهم بالعلم والإرشاد والإحسان. Advising others to that which pleases their Lord with knowledge, guidance, and compassion. صاحب الخلائق بالجسوم وإنما أرواحهم في منزل فوقاني. Accompanying the people in bodily form, whilst their spirits dwell at a sublimer station. This is their state with the people, which is the most perfect of states in the sublimes.
طيب, so he follows up, rahimahullah ta'ala, al-ihsan to Allah Azza wa Jal with al-ihsan to the khalq, because both of them are forms of ihsan. And so this actually, even though it's called the station of khuluq, it is also a part of ihsan. Okay? Because how you deal with the creation, being good to the creation, that is the essence of good character. All right? So, now.
They begin by sincerely advising people to their utmost.
طيب, nasahul khaliqa. Sincerely advising, I would take away advising here and just saying being sincere in your relationships. Add to that sincerity, because nasiha, 3 words we might need to use in English to kind of encompass what we're talking about here. Sincerity, fidelity, loyalty. Okay? That combination kind of brings us to the idea of nasiha. Okay? Nasahu. No. Sorry.
They begin by being sincere in their relationships, loving for them the good they love for themselves, deploring for them the evil they deplore for themselves, striving to remove every evil from them with all that is possible, and exerting themselves in order to bring about benefit to them with every means at their disposal.
Okay, so all of these, inshallah ta'ala, when we get to, we'll cover what good character looks like from the ahadith of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, because there are 4 hadiths which combine the essence of good character as a whole, which is covered, which covers what the author is mentioning here. Now,
this they do by enjoining goodness, forbidding evil, feeding those that suffer from hunger, clothing those that are destitute, alleviating those that are distressed, teaching those that are ignorant, restraining those that are oppressors, helping those that are oppressed, warding off potential harm from people, and keeping the harms of their own selves away from others. Furthermore, their association with people is external and bodily. As for their hearts and spirits, they hover around the beloved and seek to be as close to him as possible.
okay, so two things here, and then we'll try to get through this. Bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, yani just touching on the bullet points. Bi'idhnillah. So the first thing is the station of good character requires that they are sincere in their relationships, that they are loyal. And loyal, by the way, does not mean that that they allow people to get away with doing evil just because they happen to be from their tribe. Right? That's not loyalty. Because all that means is that person is going to have to meet Allah Azza wa Jalla with that. And so you're part of you being loyal and sincere to them is wanting their salvation. And that means not letting them get away with that which is harmful in this dunya. All right? And that is part of fidelity. Okay, so all of that is a kind of, that nasiha requires them to love for others what they love for themselves. And so we're going to talk about what that is, inshallah. But it says, fi rida mahbubihim. So they are giving nasiha fi rida mahbubihim. What does that mean? Because it has 2 meanings, and I'm not sure if that comes out clear in the translation. Yeah.
One is they advise people to please their beloved, or to be pleasing to the beloved.
Okay, so one is that they advise people to be pleasing to Allah or to the beloved. Nah.
And another is that they're advising them in a way that is pleasing.
Okay, and the other is that they're advising them actually for the pleasure of Allah, which is what is covered in the second line here. Sahibul khalaiq bil jusum. Their musahaba and their nasiha for the people, their accompanying of them is bodily. It's physical. As for their hearts, as for their souls, that is tied to Allah. Why do you think he's mentioning this here? And I'm going to get back to bil ilmi wal irshad wal ihsan. That is because, I want you to pay attention to this, being good to people, right? Because that's what we're talking about here, is not always going to be appreciated. And if a person is having good character with others because they want it reciprocated, then what happens when it's not reciprocated? They no longer are going to have that good character. But if the good character is for Allah Azza wa Jal, then even when it's not reciprocated, a person still maintains that balance. Now, mind you, this is not a call to turn in the other cheek. That's not what that means, okay? But it does mean that your response to evil is still going to be in a manner that is fi rida al-mahbub, subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's still going to be in a manner that is pleasing to Allah Azza wa Jal, because ultimately you are not doing it for reciprocation or for appreciation. إِنَّمَا نُطْعِمُكُمْ لِوَجْهِ اللَّهِ. We're feeding you only for what? For the sake of Allah Azza wa Jal. لَا نُرِيدُ مِنْكُمْ جَزَاءً وَلَا شُكُورًا. We're not doing this because we want what? Some kind of compensation, jaza, or appreciation, or shukur. طيب. إِنَّمَا نُطْعِمُكُمْ لِوَجْهِ اللَّهِ. And that is how the servants of Allah Azza wa Jal, that is part of their character. That what they are doing is for the sake of Allah Azza wa Jal. All right? Perhaps, okay, Shaitan enters from this door. And that is, a person does it so that they are appreciated. And that no longer, what? Carries the reward of doing good to the creation. Because now, their reward is that what? Is that they were thanked. All right? The first people who will be used as fuel for the fire, the Prophet ﷺ said, he mentioned from amongst them a person who does what? He gives charity, right? And he said, Ya Rabbi, I gave charity for your sake. Kadhabt. You lied. You gave charity so that it could be said that you were what? Generous. وَقَدْ قِيلَ. And it was said. You got your reward. That's what you wanted, and Allah gave you what you wanted. Right? SubhanAllah. Even Allah, even with those, He gave them what they wanted. You wanted to be said it was generous, that's what you got. So, if that's what a person is doing it for, then Allah musta'an. That's a door that Shaitan enters. Another door that Shaitan may enter, and this is important as well, because it doesn't necessarily mean a person's doing something haram. I mean, they're not doing it to show off, but it becomes custom, whatever it is. Just, right? This family is known for feeding people. Khalas? So, out of tradition of the family, then the children are also doing what? They feed everybody on Friday. It's not for the sake of Allah. It's not like they're doing it because they want to be thanked by the people, but it's just customary now. Understand? And so, while there may still be some reward in that, it's not the reward of the person that's doing it solely for the sake of Allah Azza wa Jal, and that's bringing that intention to mind. All right? Again, it doesn't negate that there may be some reward for that. Right? So these are things to think about. Yani, fi rida mahbubihim, which is also covered in that second line. And what is their means of nasiha? It is three things. Number one is al-ilm. And that is to teach people the deen of Allah Azza wa Jal. To teach people that which will benefit them in their deen and also their dunya. And also their dunya. That is part of the nasiha. So what does that nasiha look like? It is to teach people. Bil-ilm. Tayyib. The second thing is al-irshad. Guidance. What is the difference between knowledge or teaching and guiding? At-ta'limu wal-irshad. What's the difference between two? Yeah, go ahead. Guiding is like holding somebody's hand. Perfect. Guidance, irshad, ja'lul ilmi amalan. It's to make the knowledge action. All right? So, if we wanted to make this a little easier, because what does it say here? How are they being sincere? How are they being loyal to the people? By teaching and by guiding. Teaching is the what, guiding is the how. Okay? How do you bring that knowledge into action? All right? And so, if we're going to actually have good character, part of that good character with the creation is to not only teach them the what, but show them the how. Take them by the hand. help them bring it into reality. All right? Tell you. What's a practical example of that? Practical example is somebody takes shahada and you say, hey, the way you pray is you start off, face the qibla, do this, say takbir, blah, blah, blah. That's the ta'aleem, that's the knowledge part. The irshad is to say, come with me. Come on, we're going to sit down. We're going to make wudu together. All right, I'm going to show you how to find the qibla. Boom. All right, now you stand up. Say Allahu Akbar, just like this. Allah, Allah, come on, right? You see the difference? That there's a difference between ta'aleem, which is teaching, okay, and irshad, which is guiding, all right? And then the last thing that he says is wal ihsan, and ihsan is isal and nafi' ilayhim. It is to bring whatever is beneficial to them, all right? So that includes, ihsan includes ta'aleem, irshad, but it also goes beyond that. Tayyib. Next, Sheikh. You'll see on the left-hand side, that's the original translation. I want you to read the right-hand side. It's a somewhat rewording of that translation.
As for their hearts and souls, they roam around the beloved, seeking from his closeness the greatest share. At times they break before him, humbled and submissive in his presence.
We understand what break means, right? Be broken in front of Allah. Right.
At other times, they thank him with love and feel a sense of pride in being connected to him, remembering his kindness and grace. Then they incline towards what pleases him, striving in acts of worship and doing good to his creation. These are the true people of worth. Indeed, they are the wise and discerning ones.
Okay, so there are 5 main points that come out of this section of what the author mentioned on the issue of good character. First is that the people of good character's hearts and souls are constantly preoccupied with Allah Azza wa Jalla. Because good character is not just what a person does, it's what motivates them to do what they do. Otherwise, it is not necessarily good character. What is the motivating factor behind why you're doing what you're doing? So, do we understand this? Like if a person is being nice to you, think about it. Is that necessarily good character? If they're doing it just because they're actually being manipulative. They're being nice to you, they're stringing you along because there's something that they want down the line. Is that good character? No. Even if it appears to be in the beginning. And so the people of good character's hearts and souls are constantly preoccupied with the lies. That is the motivating factor for what they do. All right. Second thing that he mentions here, they are aware of Allah Azza wa Jalla's greatness and their own shortcomings. And for that reason, they are oftentimes humbled in front of Allah Azza wa Jalla, broken in front of Allah Azza wa Jalla. Not all the time, by the way. There are different states that a person has. Sometimes, and this is the third thing, they're a little bit different, and it doesn't mean that they're mutually exclusive, but sometimes they find that their hearts are filled with gratitude and love for Allah Azza wa Jalla. And this is part of that good character, because this is what pushes them. Look, let me show you something. They are aware of Allah's greatness and their own shortcomings. Why is that? Why do you think that's important for good character? Yeah.
Keeps them humble, keeps them away from pride and arrogance.
Oh, okay. Because that is one of the things that keeps them humble, right? And it also allows them to overlook other people's shortcomings because they want Allah Azza wa Jalla to overlook their own shortcomings. So they realize, who am I in front of Allah Azza wa Jalla? And look at how my shortcomings are with Allah. This person's shortcomings towards me have nothing in comparison to my shortcomings towards Allah Azza wa Jalla, right? So it allows them, and you can't possibly have a decent relationship and have a good character with people if you can't overlook some of their faults, because everybody has them. The third one here, their hearts are filled with gratitude and love for Allah Azza wa Jal. How does that contribute to one's good character? Yeah.
It allows them to realize what they have in front of them and not try to fill their heart with like the worldly desires, but rather.
Tell you but how does that impact their relationship with other people? If you're grateful for what you have, you will not use it to transgress against the law. But how does that relate to your relationships with other people? Either, further.
Those who are grateful to the creation, grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so if they're grateful to the creation in your interaction with them.
Ahsant. Man lam yashkur in-nas, lam yashkur Allah Azza wa Jal. If you are thankful to Allah Azza wa Jal, then you realize that Allah Azza wa Jal has used some of His creation to bring about those blessings that you have. And so you're thankful. You show gratitude to His creation. And that's important in relationships. It is important, even though, yes, I'm not doing it to be appreciated. Okay? I know that you are not being good to me to be appreciated, but I have to show appreciation to you in order to be thankful to Allah Azza wa Jal. All right. Their actions align with what pleases Allah, excelling in worship and kindness to others. So that's why it says here, if you look at that second to last sentence, then they incline towards what pleases Allah, striving in acts of worship, yani striving to be excellent in their worship and doing good, extending that good to the creation. And lastly, they are these people of good character. They are the ones, right, who are wise and discerning. He said they are an-nas, they are the people, right? They don't waste their lives in trivial pursuits. They are the people of value and wisdom. This is the point that he wanted to make. We're going to end with this here about good character. There are 4 hadith that bring about good character, and that's what we're going to mention here and close off with tonight's class, inshallah ta'ala. And then next week we will finish the book, inshallah. Naam, fadal.
Ibn Abi Zayd al-Qayrawani said, the sum of good character and its essence branched out from 4 hadiths. The statement of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, whoever believes in Allah and the last day, let him speak good or remain silent. His statement sallallahu alaihi wasallam, from the excellence of a person's Islam is leaving what does not concern him. His statement sallallahu alaihi wasallam to the one who asked for a concise admonition, do not get angry. His statement sallallahu alaihi wasallam, a believer loves for his brother what he loves for himself.
Ibn Abi Zayd al-Qayrawani, rahimahullah ta'ala, he was known as al-Malik al-Saghir, Malik al-Saghir, yani Lil Malik, Lil Imam Malik. Great scholar of the Maliki madhab, rahimahullah ta'ala, and his book Ar-Risala is well known in the madhab. So the first hadith that he says, so he says that there are these 4, and الشيء يعني الشيء بالشيء يذكر. Shaykh Abdul-Rahman, Hafidhullah, Shaykh Abdul-Razak al-Badr, he mentions these 4 often. And he got this from Ibn Rajab, rahimahullah, who mentioned it in Jami' al-Ulum al-Hikam. He actually mentions that Ibn Abi Zayd al-Qayrawani said that these 4 hadith. طيب. What was the Jami' al-Ulum al-Hikam by Ibn Rajab, his the compendium of knowledge and wisdom, is an explanation of what? 40 the 40 hadith of 40 plus 8, 42 plus 8 of Al-Imam al-Nawawi. In Nawawi's 40 hadith. And Nawawi's 40 hadith are 40 hadith of what? Right. Those are hadith around which Islam revolves. These 4 hadith are in the 40 hadith. Because good character revolves around these 4. Okay? Good character revolves around these 4 hadith. Statement of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam: "Man kana yu'minu billahi wal yawmil akhir, falyaqul khayran aw liyasmut." Whoever believes in Allah on the last day, let him speak good or remain silent. طيب. What is the core character trait that we take away from this hadith? Yes.
That
That's coming. Like you said, controlling your tongue, controlling speech. Is that not important for character? Huh? Because good character often starts with what you say to somebody, right? It often is those beautiful words that you extend to somebody, right? That they hear from you, that endears you to them. And so a person who does not control their tongue is going to either insult others. How many fights have started just because somebody said the wrong thing, right? Divorce, right? Because somebody couldn't control their tongue. They didn't really want to, right? But they couldn't control their tongue. To the end of it. The gossip, the insults, the idle talk. But notice, what's better? To stay silent or to speak good? Huh? To say what is good. That's better. And so part of this issue of good character is that you do say good things. That's part of good character. And then if you don't have anything good to say, then what? Then you remain silent. But that's after you've exhausted, right? Trying to say something that is good. Type. Second hadith. Leaving off what does not concern a person. Type. What is the character trait here that we're looking at? Yeah.
Preserving your time, focusing on what benefits you.
Nice. Good. Focusing on what is beneficial, right? Which means that this hadith is talking about what? Self-discipline and prioritization, all right? Which is critical in how you interact with others. People do not want you minding their business. That is one of the, that is a major character flaw that you pry into. So what happens when you leave off that which does not concern you, right? Then now you are you're exercising that self-discipline. You are prioritizing what is important to you. Now, there's a side note here though. Part of your good character though, and this is going to come when we get to the last one, which is the love for your brother, which you love for yourself. If you become aware of something that is going on and you can help somebody, don't say, nah, I'm gonna mind my business. That doesn't concern me. No, you have something to offer here, right? And so you should get involved. Next one is la taghdab, la taghdab. And the core trait that we're looking for here for character is the ability to control your emotions and not be controlled by your emotions. Okay? It is self-control. Okay? Forbearance. Anger is the sum total of what will lead to destructive behavior and regret. Right? A person gets angry 10 minutes later and they done blacked out. They did something crazy. They said something crazy. And then they regret it. And subhanAllah, that may lead to years in a hole, right? Just because a person got angry and did not know how to control that anger. Last but not least, the Prophet ﷺ, and this is a version of the hadith, but the other version is La yu'minu ahadukum. That's the more famous version. That one of you does not have iman until he loves for his brother what he loves for himself. The core trait that we're looking for here is selflessness, empathy, right? Being able to empathize with others and also being selfless. And this is different than the golden rule of some of the philosophers, which is to do unto others as you would have done unto you. This is not just about doing. This is about actually what? How you feel on the inside. To love for your brothers what you love for yourself. And these ahadith bring about that good character. This is ihsan to the creation. And what we talked about in the first half was ihsan to the creator. هذا والله تعالى أعلم وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.